In today's exciting episode, we have more UAP news coming out of Congress, an interview with a ball lightning scientist, and Enigma updates, including looking at a couple more sightings. Stay tuned. Welcome to Open Mind UAP News. I'm your host, Alejandro Rojas. Let's get right into the news. To start off with a little bit of sad news, unfortunately, well-known UAP researcher Bruce Maccabee passed away last week. This is a post from his wife, kind of informing people. He was 82 years old, and he was very well known. He was actually a Navy optical physicist for many years and had examined a lot of UFO sightings. In fact, just a couple anecdotes from my personally knowing him. I met him for the first time 20 odd years ago when I was helping MUFON put on a conference. I think the very first conference I helped them with. And it was very cool because, like a lot of hotels, there was a piano in the lobby and someone was playing it. And I thought, wow, this is gorgeous. It must be someone that the hotel hired. That was really cool of them. So I go to take a look, and lo and behold, it is Bruce Maccabee here in his suit. He looks like a scientist. He's there playing the piano, and he's just wonderful, playing great classical music. And he was kind of known for that. I was very shocked, and I was excited because I knew who he was. And I was really excited to meet him for the first time. So I thought that was really cool. Moving forward through the conference, I was really busy, and I was the last one to sit down for dinner at the big keynote talk and large, evening dinner. And the last seat available was next to Bruce Maccabee. So actually, I was very excited. Of course, I had a seat that was with kind of the people that were organizing the conference. They gave that away to some researcher I think they wanted to talk to. But I was very happy to sit next to Bruce Maccabee because I had several questions for him. At this time, I was a field researcher, and I had sent him some cases to look at. And he had kind of poo-pooed them. He was like, sorry, this isn't what you think it is. And I was a little bit frustrated, but I learned something very important when talking to him. He was like, I was saying, you said this could have been a street lamp, but the witness said this, and that. And he made a great point. He said, I'm the photo and video analyst, so I only look at the data that the photo or the video can provide. And if I can't rule out a street light, then it's likely a street light. And he had a great point because this is data. And if you can't rule something out using that piece of data, then he's got a great point. Then, you don't have something that can substantiate that something abnormal happened. So I learned a very important lesson to this day. Even when we get to some of the cases we'll talk about, like Englin Air Force Base. This was an important one recently where Matt Gaetz, the congressman, had come forward and said, DOD, have you looked at this case? The DOD looks at it, and they essentially are saying, we can't rule out a balloon. I told you all I would look more into it, and I did. There were several radar targets that they weren't able to correlate, so they didn't know what those were. The pilot did not see those targets. He only saw one object, which we can't explain. It doesn't necessarily look like a balloon, but to the point of the report from AARO, we also can't rule it out. There's no characteristics or no observed even or recorded movements of this object that show that it would not have been, a balloon or something that wasn't moving at incredible speed. So they have a great point. There's just not enough data to prove otherwise. Now, allegedly, there is a video. One researcher said he is looking for a video, although the AARO report said there was no video. There wasn't a video able to be captured. So again, we have something that could be strange, but we don't have evidence that it certainly is, not enough scientific data. So that was something really important that I learned from Bruce Maccabee. I worked and talked with him for a lot throughout the years, interviewing him or discussing different cases. One of the most important interactions I've had with Bruce Maccabee was that he was investigating a case in the late 70s where these airmen had an alleged UFO sighting. He was investigating it and found them to be credible, but they told him to talk to this guy named Doty, Richard Doty. He did. This Richard Doty guy had a lot of weird things to say. And he kind of blew it off. He said, I don't really buy this guy's stuff. I think he was lying to me. When he FOIA documents about this case, they sent him a bunch of documents about Richard Doty. He said, I don't know why they sent these to me, but I kind of ignored them. And you can see this on his website. I'll put a link up to it. Those documents were really important to me because they told the story of this disinformation kind of thing that had happened. And I've talked about this before, and I'll definitely talk about it again. And I'll put a link in the show description. But it's essentially an Air Force disinformation case that has not been addressed, even though AARO was supposed to look at disinformation and include it in their historical report. They did not. Anyway, this led me to FOIA documents and get the same documents that he did on Richard Doty and do my investigation that I'll put in the show notes. So he was a big part of that. But he's been a big part of UFO research. He's done a lot of FOIA work to get a lot of CIA and FBI documents. He has some books. In fact, let me show you here. He's got several books. The FBI CIA UFO Connection, The Legacy of 1952, which was a very important year for the topic of UFOs. And another, perhaps the most important case is he calls it 3 Minutes in June, the UFO sighting that changed the world. And that's the Kenneth Arnold sighting. He wrote a book on that as well. So these are things you can get on Amazon. You'll also see that he wrote a couple forwards to some of Stanton Friedman's books. And that's what those other two you see here are. So very well-known figure, and he will definitely be missed. He was an important guy in this field, and we actually, with Open Minds, did a bio for him when we gave him an award previously, and I'll put that in the description as well for everybody to see. Moving on, aliens invade Taylor Swift. So you see here, you might not have seen this, more lighthearted news. I just wanted to share this because look at how amazing that graphic is. So I don't know if any of you have gone to the concert. This is something they just added recently, but pretty amazing visuals of a UFO that she's added to her conference. And of course, Taylor Swift always is big news. So that was big news out there. And I just wanted to share it with you because it just looks so cool. But moving on to some of the more official stuff going on, this is a memo that went out May 9th in 2024 from the National Archives. And why is this important? Because as it states here, the NDAA for 2024, that's the National Defense Authorization Act. Essentially, these are the acts where Congress says, hey, DOD, if you want to get paid, here's what we want you to do, because Congress is in charge of the budget for the Pentagon. And of course, as we know, they've been asked to get involved with UAP. And one of the things that they're supposed to do is collect all the UAP documents and put it into this archive for the National Archives. And that's what this memo was about, going out saying, hey, all of you agencies, here's, your directive on getting some files. When this went out, there wasn't much that was sent in, but now you can go look at this, the records related to unidentified anomalous phenomena at the National Archives, and you'll find there is a bunch of stuff here. So there are pictures and images, videos, they call them moving images still, presidential library information, microfiche films, a bunch of blog articles here that had been previously written on UAP. And this database is growing larger and larger. So there's a lot of stuff in here. It's pretty cool. I mean, in some of these cases, there'll be information that you can get. Otherwise, it'll be stuff where it'll tell you where it is to go get it or print it. That can be a little more difficult. But there are times that I've worked with like some of these presidential libraries, and they can be pretty helpful. You can call them up and say, hey, would you happen to have this or that? And they'll look for it for you, and they'll email it to you. I've gotten some great pictures in the past through doing that. So this is going to be a great research area resource for people. And it's not something that has been talked about much out there. So definitely want to go take a look at that. This is some interesting news coming out of Canada. So this is CTV News. This is written by Daniel Otis, who has been doing a lot of great work writing about Canada and UAP. And this one, he's talking about US intelligence officials wanted to meet with Transport Canada's UFO lead. So, Transport Canada, I guess their Department of Transportation, has been tasked with kind of taking the lead on UFOs, but they don't want to. Essentially, this article says despite the US Director of National Intelligence coming to Canada and saying, hey, we would like to talk to you about your records, they're shirking them. They're saying, they're setting up meetings or pretending like they will. They're saying verbiage like, they don't want these kind of requests, that they're calling any UFO request a harassment. But they're really pushing back having to do anything on this topic. And so that's what this article is about. Pretty disheartening to see, especially given how the US government has gotten so into this. Canada just doesn't want anything to do with it. And we still have a long way to go here in the US. And here's what I mean by that. So, Dean Johnson. Dean Johnson has a site here. You can find him mostly on Twitter or X. And if you click on it, you can see some articles here, but he's been great. He's been keeping an eye on the bills out there. He works in this area, and he's been able to kind of summarize what's been going on and in Congress, especially with legislation. One of the things he's written about, and which you might have heard about, is Rep. Tim Burchett, along with the UAP caucus, have written a bill. It's a page and a half, and it essentially says release all the UAP records. Very, very strange to have a proposed bill that is only a page and a half. The Schumer amendment, for example, on UAP was 64 pages. If you go look at the legislation when it comes to the NDAA out there, they're pages and pages. So it's certainly not going to be seen as credible, only being a page and a half. And again, it's this UAP caucus group, not really, although they're out there making a lot of noise, and we'll look at that a little bit more in a second, they're not really giving an air of credibility with stunts like this. So far, these guys are part of the oversight committee in the House, and the committee has not taken up this bill to look at and approve to move forward to the wider House for a vote. It may not happen. We really haven't heard much since May 16th when they posted this. So we'll see about that. Certainly not the best way to go to bring credibility and really prove your point, especially when they are alleging a lot of conspiratorial things. You think that you'd want to substantiate that there's a lot of records that are being hidden and not being shared. You've got to make that argument, and that argument really just isn't made here, and that's why this probably won't be taken too seriously moving forward. And someone who has been more effective, which is Christian Gillibrand, she did an interview with CBS News recently to talk about UFOs. Well, actually, it was to talk about Israel, border security, and she was asked about UFOs. She seemed a little surprised to get the question. It's a pretty long video, so I won't play it all for you here. You can go take a look at it. But essentially, she's just talking about the importance of UAP and that the Pentagon is looking into it. So she's definitely supporting their current efforts. But she also brings the conversation to drones and how it's important that we take a look at drones. And you'll notice drones are kind of taking over a lot of the conversation when it comes to UAP. And I think it's because of what I've reviewed in the last few shows, is that the credibility of this topic has kind of deteriorated, that the real credible cases have kind of lost kind of the attention they've gotten due to a lot of the conspiratorial stuff that many have felt is been debunked. And so we're kind of at a lull as far as when it comes to the credibility of the topic. Now, she is saying it's important that we look into this, but then, of course, she segues into drones as opposed to talking about the real unidentified cases, like the Nimitz case that we can't understand. And that has been a driving force for really kind of tackling the true unknowns. Drones are a subset of UAP when they are not immediately identified. And that is the definition they've used. If something cannot be immediately identified, then it is a UAP until it can be identified. often drones, just by visual inspection or by looking at photographs or video, things can be determined to be drones. But of course, when they're not, they're more mysterious. And sometimes the characteristics of these objects that are captured are outside of the capability of drones. And of those are the ones that are really interesting. But the conversation kind of keeps being brought back to drones. Drones are obviously a very important topic. There are these swarms of drones that have been seen over sensitive areas, in sensitive airspace, in training areas, even over military warships. And we don't know what they are. So it's something we definitely need to get a handle on, and Congress is very focused on. It's just hopefully the importance, or at least the credibility of the UAP topic, doesn't droop low enough where they just kind of drop it. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anytime soon. So on the topic of Congress and UAP, there was a hearing by that oversight committee that the UAP caucus belongs to, Tim Burchett, Luna, some of those others I've mentioned. And in the hearing, they were interviewing the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, and Tim Burchett asked her a UAP question. Let's take a look.
Let me switch gears. What is the responsibility of the Federal Protective Services within the Nuclear Security Administration?
Are you talking about transporting fuels?
No, ma'am. I want you to speak. I was going to follow up with the numerous reports by the Federal Protective Services officers describing suspicious occurrences of UAPs over nuclear facilities.
Let me just say, the Defense Department has said there is no evidence of UFOs, et cetera, or aliens in the United States. However, at those sites, there may be drones that may be nefarious. And so we are definitely looking at that and making sure that our national security sites are protected. We have a whole program related to countering drones that may be coming from.
Well, this isn't about drones, and this is prior to drones even. What protocols does the Department of Energy have for reporting and responding to any UAP sightings near nuclear infrastructure? And people joke about this, but I get a lot of questions about this, concerning this, and about this hearing today from my constituents. So I would appreciate you answering that if there are any protocols.
Well, certainly there are protocols whenever we see anything unusual around our nuclear sites or our national security sites writ large.
Okay, we'll switch gears.
So on the one hand, it's great that Burchett asked the question. On the other hand, it would have been great if he would have corrected her, because that statement she made is completely inaccurate. She said the Defense Department has said there is no evidence of UFOs. Again, that is completely false. They have not said that. They have said there's no evidence of aliens, but not of UFOs. Further, the point could have been made that the Pentagon has been directed with making sure to come up with protocols for reporting UAP. And she should be let known that UAP are an issue, and drones are a subset of UAP, like we said, when they cannot immediately be identified. So she needs to be aware by somebody. Congress is the right place, and too bad Burchett didn't take this opportunity to let her know that, no, you are wrong. That is not what the DoD said. She needs to be corrected, and she should. Then the point could be made that if the Pentagon's taking this seriously and they're coming up with protocols, don't you think you should too? And I think that's where she could be challenged. And in the historical record, you can see cases historically, not just in the U.S., but throughout the world, where UAP, and they have been determined not to be drones, have been spotted over nuclear facilities. So it's a topic that she could have and hopefully will be probed a little bit more on, no pun intended. There was another question that came up. So Representative Luna then followed up, and let's listen to her conversation here.
Secretary Granholm, earlier when Representative Burchett asked you about some UAP stuff, you said that the DoD essentially had denied any existence of that, and you referred to them as drones, correct?
It's my understanding that the Department of Defense has looked at this and issued a report about it.
I have a lot of questions, so just quick and concise if possible. There have been persistent claims and reports, including those from credible whistleblowers to this committee, suggesting that the U.S. government, potentially including the Department of Energy, has been involved in reverse engineering technologies recovered from UAP. For example, the Pentagon's proposed Kona Blue program aimed at reverse engineering such technologies, although it was ultimately not established. Can you clarify whether the Department of Energy has been involved in any such efforts, either historically or currently, to analyze reverse engineering materials from related to UAPs?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay, there are several reports indicated frequent drone incursions over DOE nuclear facilities, including an incident on April 1st, 2021 at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, also known as LNL. Can you detail the DOE's current security measures to prevent unauthorized drone activities or UAPs, and what steps are being taken to enhance these measures of frequencies of incidences?
Yeah, we have a whole counter drone effort to make sure that all of our national security sites and our labs are protected from incursions from drones, I'll just say, that are not authorized. So there's a whole series of protocols, probably not ripe for discussion in this public setting.
Correct. So I reviewed some unclassified materials from around the 40s and 50s, and so they weren't just being reported as drones back then. And I encourage you to look over those materials because I think that you guys should be upgrading that program to cover down on UAPs. There have been documented sightings of metallic spheres over DOE facilities, if you want to call them drones in this instance, such as one report on April 30th, 2019 over LLNL. What investigations have been conducted in regards to these sightings, and what conclusions do you guys have about the nature and origins of these objects?
I'm happy to follow up with you on that.
Okay, we'll be submitting also too for public records some questions after this, if you could please answer those. Considering the DOE's involvement in nuclear and sensitive research facilities, how does the DOE coordinate with agencies like the Department of Defense and AARO to investigate UAP sightings?
We obviously are teamed with the Department of Defense because of our national security and nuclear mission.
Are you able to cite any specific investigations or shared data analysis efforts?
I don't have information on that.
Okay. As of right now, again, we'll be submitting some questions for you after this, but I hope that you guys can answer those in a timely fashion. And again, for those that might be tuning into this, I would encourage you to look at some of those unclassified materials, and we'll be happy to provide your office with that. I'll just follow up by one other question, I guess, to close it out. Does the DOE currently work with JSOC in order to handle security measures?
We work with all of the security entities around the federal government. We're part of an overall all-of-government effort on both cyber as well as national security.
Do you guys work with JSOC? Yes or no?
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So there you go. This one was interesting. I mean, it was great that she cited that there were cases historically. There are cases that are actually more recent than the 50s and 60s. But to her point, in the 50s and 60s, there was more official concern. And in fact, you can see that in some of the CIA papers from that era. And I can post some of that also in the description below. But again, she gave her a pass to let her call these metallic orbs drones when they're UAP. And I was hoping at the beginning that she was going to clarify the difference between UAP and drones, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So that education still needs to happen with GRANHOLM, obviously, on the distinction between the two, especially if, like she says, she's working with the Department of Defense and will cooperate with AARO. So yeah, some interesting, you now have the Department of Energy on the record saying they're not aware of UAP cases, and they're definitely not back engineering UAP. That's not what the Department of Energy does, so that's no surprise. We really don't have, except for in the conspiracy areas, much in regards to UAP and the Department of Energy. I did find some files recently, and I will post those in a link below. But yeah, there's a lot more to do here, I think, with educating that group. This is the first time I think the Department of Energy has really kind of been faced with being involved with all of this, although they have been cited by Congress in a few occasions. So we'll see what happens going forward with this Enigma Labs. So I did want to get into, and here's a piece of news out there. When it comes to Enigma Labs, they have some new state sighting pages. So, and here you can see an article in the Roswell Daily Record about the sighting pages in New Mexico and a really interesting sighting that they've posted here. Maybe we'll look at that one later on, but I did get some really good cases out of New Mexico recently. And if you go into the app, you'll be able to see those in the content feed, that first tab. But what's interesting about these pages, and let me bring one up here for you, Enigma Labs.io. So if you go to explore, you can go to explore sightings, and then you're going to see a bunch of countries and the different sightings, numbers of sightings they've had. Of course, we want to look at the United States right now because I want to look at the state ones. Of course, 230 sightings. That's a conglomerate of different sightings that we've collected from many different agencies. Of course, if we go to, let's say, New Mexico, you can see a graph. You can see some characteristics. You'll see like that where they are on the number of sightings. That's not per population. So, where there's more people, there's more sightings reported. But you do get kind of top shapes. Not surprising. Usually a point of light is the most common one, or spheres, which is also kind of could be a point of light. And then you'll see some videos. So if you don't have the Apple app to be able to get in there, this is a way for you to kind of look at some sightings in your area or throughout the world. So it's kind of a cool feature. So last week, the strange video that we looked at was kind of this orb traveling through the sky, and it kind of looked like potentially ball lightning. There was lightning going on in the background. So I sent that to a ball lightning scientist I've been talking to, Karl Stephan, and invited him on the show to talk to him about more specifics and his work researching ball lightning. So let's check out that interview. All right, I'm very happy to welcome Karl Stephan from the Texas State University, an expert on ball lightning. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
To start off, I would like to know, how you got involved with this sort of work.
Well, there's how I got involved and how I got interested. How I got interested was I was in a public library in Fort Worth, Texas, when I was in high school and just cruising through the science stacks. And I found a book that was titled Ball Lightning, So I pulled it out and began reading, and I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen it. I'd never met anybody who'd seen it, but it sounded interesting. And nothing really happened at the time, except I said to myself, someday I'm going to look into that. Well, about 40 years later, someday happened. Someone published a paper out of Israel claiming to have produced something that might be ball lightning. And it turns out that the equipment they were using was very similar to some equipment that a colleague of mine in Austin had in his lab. So we put some machinery together to replicate their finding and published, a paper saying, well, it has, a slight resemblance to ball lightning, but on the other hand, there's these other problems. And that got published, and so I found that you could actually publish papers on ball lightning in respectable journals. And, one thing led to another. So it's been about 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, I have tenure, so I don't have to worry about publish or perish necessarily, but I do like publishing, although what I publish about is not something that gets a whole lot of attention, but it's still interesting.
Yeah. What was that equipment? In what way were they reproducing or potentially reproducing ball lightning?
Well, it was a high power microwave generator, and they were doing something that has actually been known for many years since World War II. Microwaves at high power used for like radars and stuff travel down a rectangular waveguide. It's basically a rectangular pipe. And if the power gets too high, it can actually arc over. You'll have a spark in the waveguide, and the arcs travel actually toward the source of the power. These people who were publishing the paper, instead of having just an arc traveling along a waveguide, they set up a tungsten electrode and concentrated the arc in a particular spot. And they found that by withdrawing the electrode and setting up certain wave conditions, they could get a little thing that looked like a tear. It was shaped like a teardrop floating at the top of the waveguide, but it was extremely bright. You had to wear goggles to look at it without blinding yourself. And it would just kind of wiggle around and hover. And it looked almost liquid. And so they published a paper saying, oh, is this what ball lightning is? And so forth. They didn't make any specific claims that they discovered it, but they pointed out strong resemblances of this phenomenon to ball lightning. And we had the same kind of high power RF generator or microwave generator. So we built a similar setup to theirs and managed to duplicate what they were doing. But the difficulties were that as soon as you turn off the power, it goes away within milliseconds. And ball lightning, one of the big mysteries about ball lightning is it seems to have its own source of energy. People have seen it appear inside closed rooms, inside aircraft, in addition to appearing outside, where you could at least imagine it's getting energy from someplace. And a lot of the early theories of ball lightning claimed that it was getting energy from an external radio frequency field, but nobody has ever measured such radio frequency fields. So that theory is pretty well disregarded by now. Mm-hmm. Whereas it was very obvious where the power was coming from to make this object. It was coming from the generator at the other end of the waveguide. So we said, perhaps there are aspects of this phenomenon that resemble ball lightning, but it's certainly not the whole show. It's not the whole explanation.
Mm-hmm. And how did the term get coined? What was being observed where that, created this kind of area of study?
You're talking about how did the term ball lightning get coined?
Correct.
I actually don't know the origin of it. My suspicion is it began perhaps as a translation from the German Kugelblitz. I can't pronounce the Russian equivalent of ball lightning, but there are, and then there's a French term. Kugelblitz means Kugel being ball and Blitz being lightning. A German by the name of Brand published an extensive study of ball lightning in about 1920, and I believe it has been translated into English. But even if it wasn't, people in this country wanting to study it would have read that book, and then they would transliterate the Kugelblitz into the word ball lightning. I haven't actually done one of those Google word studies of finding a frequency of appearing versus time. That would actually be an interesting thing to do. But I suspect that before about 1900, people would refer to balls of fire that would be seen around thunderstorms and sometimes volcanoes. And that is a phrase that goes back even farther than the term ball lightning. So the association with lightning was not always prominent. But as time went on, people started to notice that these odd, persistent spheres of light were associated with thunderstorms. And so the term ball lightning began to be accepted as a term for these. The trouble is, of course, that we cannot reproduce ball lightning in the laboratory. We don't have a single accepted theory as to what it is. And so the term itself is somewhat, I wouldn't say so much as ambivalent, but people see something and they say it's ball lightning, and it's difficult sometimes to say whether it is or not. But there's been enough reports about phenomena that people call ball lightning, which have a common set of characteristics, so that at least I believe that there is an actual physical phenomenon behind these multiple sightings. And we can say that there is probably one, or at least, perhaps more than one phenomenon, but probably just one phenomenon that's actually ball lightning.
What is the set of characteristics?
Well, one is it's associated with thunderstorms, not all the time, but most of the time. The second characteristic is it persists for at least a second, possibly up to 10 or 20 or 30 seconds, meaning it stays more or less the same shape and brightness during its lifetime. Another characteristic is it does not seem to rise like a heated gas would. flames are a form of plasma, just ordinary flames coming out of a campfire or your gas burner on a stove. But because they're hot air, they rise by convection. Ball lightning does not often seem to rise by convection. Sometimes it falls from the sky. It's been observed to move against the wind. It typically when people see it moves more or less horizontally at a 3 to 5 feet per second, almost a walking pace. Sometimes higher, but its motion is unusual compared to any kind of glowing object that people see, which is one reason it's so that they remember it so easily. It's just like nothing they've ever seen before. The size is typically, it can be as small as a baseball, large as a basketball. Grapefruit is about the average size. The colors can vary from white, orange, yellow, red are the most typical colors. Occasionally blue, very rarely green, sometimes multiple colors. It doesn't seem to have a structure. Most people can't see inside it, but it's sometimes people can. And when at the end of its lifetime, or at the end of when people can see it, it either goes around a corner and goes out of sight, or if it's in sight when it gets to the end of its lifetime, it either vanishes or sometimes it explodes. And when it explodes, sometimes it damages things.
Wow.
So those are the common features of most sightings of ball lightning that I would qualify as quote unquote genuine sightings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I reviewed a video from Enigma Labs last week on the show, and I sent that video to you. And I'm kind of excited because it could be ball lightning. It did move horizontally,
Mm-hmm.
but of course we need to get more information. But it might be a
Right.
good example.
Yeah, there are, the distance from which an object is sighted is important. If I'm recalling that video correctly, it appeared to be an object that was, hundreds or thousands of feet away from the camera, which is okay. I mean, you can't do more than you can do. Another question is, was somebody watching the object in addition to recording the video? I don't know the answer to that question. Because if people are watching it, they may get from, environmental clues, a better idea of how far the object was away. But a simple, two-dimensional photograph with a bright spot on it, you can't immediately tell the how far away it was. It could be a great big object miles away. It could be, I've had people send me videos of things that from security cameras that are probably gnats flying within a few inches of the lens. But it
Yeah.
looks like this big mysterious glowing orb, and so without further information, sometimes you just can't decide where it was exactly or what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, the motion and the brightness are somewhat consistent with ball lightning, but I wouldn't make any definite conclusions without getting more information.
Have people been hurt by ball lightning?
Yes, there was a case of a child sitting in front of a fireplace with his father, and ball lightning came down the chimney. Back when people used chimneys a lot, at least in this country, uh, instances of ball lightning coming down chimneys were fairly common. It struck the child, and when the child was taken to a medical facility, the people there took photographs of the abdominal area where this child was struck, and there were what are called Lichtenberg figures. It looks like a little lightning bolt itself, little branched lines on the skin, which is something that can happen with conventional lightning. And apparently, this ball lightning also created those Lichtenberg figures. There are records of people being killed by ball lightning. A scientist named Richman, I believe, in Russia was killed by ball lightning, or what appeared to be ball lightning. There's some reports out of Russia of people being killed by ball lightning. It's very unusual, but there are records of people being killed by it. Yeah. my advice to people who see it is don't stick your finger in it. Get out your phone, get out your cell phone and take pictures, but don't stick your finger in it.
Mm-hmm. Which gets me to the next question, which is they can also be close to the ground, I guess, and even inside of buildings.
Definitely, yes. We have dozens of reports. We have a ball lightning report website, and we've collected over 800 raw reports, just the numbers, many of which are probably genuine ball lightning. And many of these describe ball lightning appearing in bedrooms, living rooms, in front of televisions, showing up along a staircase and going down the hall and out the front door, things like this. They can move through closed glass windows, which is pretty remarkable.
Wow.
From outside to inside or vice versa. But, that's one of the most paradoxical features of the object. The fact that, inside a room or even a metal airplane, ball lightning has been seen several times inside metal aircraft. That's the difficulty because metal typically shields the interior from electromagnetic effects, and that would be one of the obvious sources of power for the ball lightning is some kind of electromagnetic, electric or magnetic field. But they don't seem to be bothered by that much, and they show up wherever they want to, more or less.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in those cases where they've gone through material or even affected people, what other kind of things have they recorded, such as maybe electromagnetic or other types of effects?
Well, there are not a great many instances of ball lightning causing electromagnetic effects that have been registered. One exception is a report by a qualified scientist named Dmitriev that was out of Russia. Oh, I think it was in the 50s or 60s. I don't remember the exact date. He was camping on a river bank and had a portable radio with him, and it was playing presumably some local station. And there was a boom, which is a chain of logs that stretched out into the river. And he saw ball lightning appear on this boom and move toward him along the riverbank, or toward the riverbank. He noticed that the AM radio, I presume it was an AM radio, was overcome by static as the ball lightning came closer. He also had a lot of other equipment with him, a device to measure ionizing radiation and a device to take air samples. The device to measure ionizing radiation registered a very high level, and the samples he took of a kind of a smoke trail that the ball lightning left indicated elevated levels of ozone. So he is probably one of the persons who got the most objective data on a ball lightning sighting. And other people have seen it interfere with televisions back when TVs had the rabbit ears, and the antenna was basically mounted on top of the TV. So there is some evidence that ball lightning produces electromagnetic radiation that can interfere with radios and televisions.
Yeah, interesting. And then, it seems, does it have characteristics? You talked about it moving strangely, that people may ascribe to, it having some sort of intelligence or some kind of method to the madness and how it's
Right.
moving. Are there properties like that where it could change direction?
The motions that people describe are somewhat erratic. They'll say it moved around the table and down the hall like, it was walking. Not many people say that, attribute kind of an intelligent controlling agent behind the object. We don't see a lot of people claiming that. It does seem to avoid obstacles. This could possibly be a purely physical phenomenon, though. There's, current air flows or something that would just make it avoid obstacles. Sometimes it does land on metal obstacles. The reason it moves is unclear, and I would not venture to guess what the total net forces are on it that causes it to move. It doesn't seem to be much heavier or lighter than air, because if it was heavier than air, it would go down to the ground all the time. If it was lighter than air, it would float up all the time. And it does neither in many cases. So it must have approximately the same density as air, if that's an appropriate term to use for it.
Mm-hmm. And are you aware of places where it happens more often?
I wish I were. It doesn't seem to favor any place other than locations where thunderstorms typically occur. Places where there are no thunderstorms or very few thunderstorms also do not report many ball lightning sightings. But there aren't any, favorite places that always shows up. I may remember one incident of a stove, with a stovepipe, that maybe somebody saw ball lightning coming out of it 2 or 3 times or something like that. But and there's been 1 or 2 reports that we haven't been able to follow up, of people saying that the thing shows up, in their hall closet several times, or on a weekly basis or something like this. Not quite that often. Mm-hmm. So there are little isolated possibilities that the things have shown up, but we have not been able to track down any location where it's regular, like Old Faithful, and we can just set our watches and go watch it the next time it shows up. Mm-hmm. It doesn't do anything like that. The most I can say is conditions under which a very large area or volume, highly intense electric field appears, seem to favor the formation of ball lightning. There was one famous incident in the city of Neuruppin, which was in East Germany at the time, in the 90s. There was a thunderstorm in the middle of the winter, and an extremely bright and intense lightning strike outside the town proper, a few kilometers outside the town. Within minutes of that strike, the weather station began getting dozens of phone calls about people seeing ball lightning. And a person wrote a paper about this Neuruppin incident, and counted at least 11 or 12 almost simultaneous appearances of ball lightning within or near the town of Neuruppin, Germany. So, there was apparently some condition, probably having to do with electric fields. They also saw sparks coming out of telephones and jumping off of fences. And so there was obviously an intense momentary electric field over large areas of the town. And so there were many ball lightning sightings as well. So, any place that large, intense electric fields happen over large volumes of space seems to favor the occurrence. But there aren't any places on Earth that I know of that just typically have large volumes of electric fields showing up. So the other case I would imagine is volcanic eruptions. There have been reports of volcanic eruptions, like from a ship at sea. They were actually in the ash field that was coming down from the volcano, and they were seeing ball lightning all over the place at their location. But again, there are often conventional lightning strikes that occur in conjunction with volcanic eruptions. And so that's not surprising that you'd see ball lightning there as well.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, with those last couple of questions, one of the places I had in mind was this place, Hesdalen, in Denmark.
I'm familiar with that. I think it's either Norway or Denmark, but
Norway,
yeah. I am not that familiar with the Hesdalen stuff. There's a project there which has been attempting to document something, and the papers I've seen out of there have either not been specific enough, or I'm not sure what's going on there. It's a difficulty that I have not investigated myself. That brings up the topic of what are called earth lights, though. Hesdalen is what people call an earth light, which is a locality where, lights that glow for some amount of time tend to show up. I spent 6 weeks in West Texas investigating something called Marfa lights, which reportedly are similar to Hesdalen lights. They just show up at random times and move around. And there may be some connection between ball lightning and Earth lights. Unfortunately, the information we have on Earth lights is not sufficient to make a definitive judgment as to whether they have characteristics of ball lightning or not. The eyewitness reports differ from ball lightning in that the Earth lights, at least the Marfa lights that a colleague of mine researched, tended to last a lot longer than ball lightning typically lasts. The typical ball lightning sighting is between 5 and 10 seconds before it either disappears or goes out of sight. The Earth lights can last up to minutes, and that's a significant difference. I don't know whether it means anything in terms of the physics or what, but other than that, just the appearance of Earth lights, according to people who've seen them close up enough to describe them, resembles the appearance of ball lightning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about next is Earth lights. Very interesting. Yeah. So when it comes to Earth lights, or I guess I had seen an experiment, and I believe this was when I was in Colorado, and I think it might have been the School of Mines, where they had compressed rock, and there was some sort of plasma that came off of it.
That is experiments which a guy named Friedemann Freund has done. He's associated with NASA. It turns out that certain types of igneous, I think they're igneous rocks. I don't remember, gabbro, I think, is one of the types of rocks. If they're subjected to sudden stress, something goes on which creates a large electric field in the rock. And they've got photographs of the thing glowing from the, corona that comes off of it. This is a pretty well documented and reproducible effect. This may be part of the explanation of what are called earthquake lights. Numerous people and even photographs exist of lights generated before, during, and after certain earthquakes. They can be lights in the sky. They can be ball lightning like glowing objects on the ground. They can be a kind of a sheet of glowing blue on the ground, kind of traveling even. There was an earthquake in Canada several years ago that people published about regarding these earthquake lights. And if you allow for the possibility that the types of rock which generate large electric fields are present in the locations where these earth lights occur, then it makes sense if there's, stresses caused by earthquakes, or even without the earthquakes being there, the stresses can be there. These electric fields could give rise to phenomena similar to ball lightning because, as I've said, ball lightning tends to show up when there are high electric fields over a large volume of space. And that could occur with these rocks being subjected to stress that is high enough to produce electric fields from them.
Really interesting. And then, of course, in the subject of this show, UAP, what I find is all interesting is, to me, ball lightning would be a subset. It would be a phenomena that we haven't explained yet that we're trying to research. Right. Have you, really interface? Has there been much interface in UAP research as far as and ball lightning research?
Not to my knowledge. One difficulty I face is that I want to preserve my bona fides, if you wish to call it that, as a scientific researcher. The entire field of what used to be called UFOs does not enjoy a good reputation in the science community, let's put it that way. In that, if you just write a paper following all the rules, but saying that you've seen a UFO or UFOs or this and that, you're very unlikely to get it published. Mm-hmm. So in order to remain believable to the types of people I want to reach, who are physicists, basically, and geophysicists, I have stayed away from any kind of publications that smack of unidentified aerial phenomena or UFOs or things like that. I try to stick to, very credible witnesses, objective evidence when at all possible. A lot of my papers have been on laboratory experiments, and, that's anybody can reproduce those who has the right equipment. And so there's no issue there with regard to what was it? I know exactly what it was. I built the machine that did it. This is not to say that there could be some fruitful interaction with what you might call the UAP community, because the average person seeing ball lightning for the first time, it is an unidentified aerial phenomenon to them. They've never seen it before. Most people these days have never heard of the phrase ball lightning. Apparently it was more publicized in the 60s or 70s, but I talked to people under 30, and I'd say 9 or 9.5 out of 10 people I ask have never heard of ball lightning.
Wow.
So if they see it, they're not going to know what it is, and they're going to call it an unidentified aerial phenomenon if they have to call it something.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we can get more information out about what this thing called ball lightning looks like, we can't quite say that it's identified in the same sense that conventional lightning is identified. I mean, we know a whole lot about the physics of conventional lightning. We can generate, imitation lightning in the laboratory, all that kind of stuff. So it's not identified in that sense, ball lightning isn't. But it is a recognizable category of observed phenomena which other people have seen and which appears to be fairly consistent. So it's identified in that we have a name for it, ball lightning. And so if you say that it, naming something identifies it, then it's not unidentified. It's unidentified, so it's almost a semantic question.
Mm-hmm. Well, knowing so many people don't know about it makes me even more excited to do this interview and educate people on what's going
good.
on. Because, you hear of stories of balls of light, even people ascribe like paranormal or ghostly kind of answers to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be, of course, a natural phenomenon that they're observing.
Yeah. And, I'm not, logically speaking, I can't rule out paranormal or supernatural phenomena. In fact, a book I was reading recently actually takes that tack toward unidentified aerial phenomena. They went ahead and claimed it. I just got to the part of the book where he says, well, I think some of them are demons.
Wow.
So, I'm not going to go around investigating demons. That's another department entirely, theology rather than astronomy or physics. But I'm not going to, say that I'm not going to be so doctrinaire as to say those things are impossible. If you just take the philosophical point of view and want to base your conclusions on evidence, then, that's probably the last alternative I'm going to turn to after I've eliminated absolutely everything else. But I'm going to turn to the most familiar, physical causes first. If we have to eliminate those, then I will maybe look at the possibility of ball lightning. If it can't even be ball lightning, then maybe we can talk about other things. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a kind of a series you work down, and paranormal and supernatural stuff is kind of the last alternative that we turn to. And that's outside the realm of science, really. It's not science as science is currently practiced.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like we're getting closer to answers? Do you feel like this field is making progress?
Well, a couple of things have happened in the last decade or so, which are encouraging. For one thing, everybody is carrying around a high quality video camera in their pocket. And another thing is high quality video cameras are popping up on millions of homes. And so what, in 1950 would have cost untold billions of dollars to do, namely put video recorders on every street corner, has happened. Now the question is, can we look through what they are recording and find what we're looking for? That's the next challenge. It turns out that the lifetime of typical ball lightning is just about the amount of time it takes to take out your phone and push the camera and get it going. So, we haven't yet, I haven't, at least on our report website, encountered anyone who has successfully, well, I won't say that I haven't encountered anyone. There have not been a lot of encounters with very close objects that have been filmed by, someone's cell phone camera. There have been a lot of people shooting stuff with their cell phone cameras that they didn't know what it was, but it's typically far enough away that we can't tell what it is either. There is one exception with regard to a security camera. I'm currently working on a paper which has some security camera footage of an object that was about 40 feet away from the camera. And there are lots of details. And so I won't say anything more about that because it's in process now. But, I think other recordings like that are going to come to light as we just have more stuff out there and more people become aware of what could be ball lightning. And they can send, reports to our ball lightning report website or to you or to other things. And I think that's an encouraging development, simply that there's a lot of equipment out there capable of generating data that may be usable. It's not ideal. We don't have networks that are set up with spectrometers and other instruments to get more data, simultaneous data of images and other interesting things we'd like to do. A colleague of mine and myself have proposed to the Air Force to do just that, actually. But, it's a start. And so just citizen science, raising awareness of ball lightning and other things, and having people look at their cell phone videos and security videos. And if it looks interesting, send it to somebody who could use it. That would be great.
Well, I'm really excited about your work. I've always been really interested in this topic since I came across it, especially because, it's one of the answers. It could be a big answer to the type of thing we're looking at when we're looking for UAP. And it's something that, to me, seems like some low-hanging fruit when it comes to actual scientific discovery related to this sort of work. So I'm excited to gathering more data and hopefully being around when you figure it out.
Well, if I don't figure it out, somebody's going to figure it out. But
Right.
we'll progress comes kind of when it feels like it. But we can do everything we can to encourage it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Hope to interface with you more. Maybe hopefully get you some great videos and some data and information to help your work. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing this information.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much to Karl. I personally get really excited with the ball lightning stuff just because I think that, this is an area where we can really make some progress. This is an area where maybe we can help discover something about ball lightning and prove that the study of UAP can help with science and scientific discovery. And that's what makes me so excited. Not only that, for any longtime UAP researcher, people don't understand why we get so excited about debunking things. And the reason why is it's good to rule things out. Let's rule out what is not mysterious so we can focus on what is mysterious, because the mysterious objects are the ones where we can grab data and figure more out about them and potentially discover something really novel, really different and weird, something that hasn't been discovered before. And if we can figure out the nature of ball lightning, then we'll be able to figure out, what UAP out there are ball lightning and what out there is something more mysterious and strange. And you heard those characteristics that he gave when it came to ball lightning. So that's something important to consider as we're investigating UAP cases. Speaking of which, let's look at a couple of UAP cases in today's Enigma Sightings of the Week. We have partnered with Enigma Labs to bring you interesting UAP cases weekly that they collect via their app and website. If you have a report to submit, you can download the app at the Apple App Store or submit it via the website at enigmalabs.io. In the interest of full disclosure, I am a paid consultant for Enigma, and that's how I can keep up to date with the best videos that come to light. In fact, I look at them daily to find the good ones, and I've got a lot of good ones that we're working on, and I'm getting to researchers, and we're looking at more closely to figure them out. Karl Stephan will be looking at the video, and hopefully we can get a hold of the witness and do some more evaluation on that one. But we have other exciting ones, including one of the videos I want to show you today that I'm super excited about. But first, one of the things I think you can be really excited about is that you're getting a preview on some of the sightings that are kind of getting on the internet and making news on my show before they get out there. So for instance, the New York sighting, I was talking about that one quite a bit before it got out there in the news and made quite a buzz. And we have some more information on that one. So we did do some investigation. We had a Twitter Spaces, like I talked about last week. Hopefully, some of you were able to join that. I'll put the link below. But we invited a scientist, Dr. Doug Buettner, who has a PhD in aerospace engineering. He's done a lot of work with the Pentagon and otherwise. Of course, we also had on researcher Ben Hansen. Now, when I first saw this video, I thought, you know what? That looks like a balloon to me. In particular, I thought perhaps it was a solar balloon. Now, Ben Hansen had looked at it and said he didn't think so because he has actually done some experiments with solar balloons. And solar balloons are essentially long trash bags that you fill with air. They're black, so when the sun hits it, the heat from the sun makes the air inside of it more hot, and so it begins to float because of hotter air, of course, is lighter than cooler air, so it's going to float. That's the case with these. However, they're very flimsy, and Ben had estimated the wind at the altitude of this object that was seen over New York out of this aircraft. Because of the winds were at 30 miles per hour, it probably would have made that solar balloon collapse. It can't float in that big of wind. So that was kind of ruled out. So what could it have been? Some people said it looked like a giant Roomba flying in the sky. And if you look at this picture, it kind of does. In fact, we'll look at the video here a little bit. In the upper right, boom, you see it there just very quickly go by. Was it moving? Was it not moving? How big could it be? So we did some estimates. Now, some online people did some estimates as well. And people are thinking, well, it's probably not that far from the aircraft. It's probably moving around 250 miles per hour relative to the person taking the image. And if it is not too far away from the aircraft, let's say 50, 60 feet, then it is about the size of a regular party balloon. And in fact, I argue, one researcher said it looked like maybe one that was shaped like a 7. I don't think so. I think this is a soft edge that we see here, not a hard edge like a 7 would be. But Dr. Buettner, who we had on our Twitter Spaces with us, he says he thinks it's a 0-shaped balloon. And I think he's probably right. So this one probably does turn out to be a balloon. Now, you're probably saying a balloon going at 250 miles per hour. That is the speed relative to the person taking the picture. And they're able to determine that. The speed is determined by how quickly it moves through the screen and also how many frames that the image is caught in, because there is a certain amount of frames per second that these videos take. By measuring those things, you can determine, its speed at different distances. And if it was, let's say, about 60 feet, and it would be traveling at about 250 miles per hour as relative to the person taking the photo. So in other words, it could have been perfectly still, but the aircraft is moving at about 240 miles per hour. So the object then maybe is moving at 10 miles per hour in the wind, or if it's moving at 30 miles per hour, it's still within the range of that speed being, a combination of its speed and the aircraft speed. So that really fits. And like I said earlier, it's kind of a case of also, can we rule that out? Can we say it definitely wasn't a balloon? We can't. And it really does fit closely. Now, there are going to be some exercises to try to mirror this. Some people have already done it online. I think Ben Hansen wants to do something like that. To me, I think case closed. I mean, other people have already done it and shown that it can look very similar. I don't think we need to repeat that. To me, I think the work's been done. And when it comes down to, like I learned from Dr. Bruce Maccabee, if you can't prove that it's not a balloon, then you really don't have much more to work with here. Still, a really good case and a very compelling video. So I'm very thankful to Michelle Reyes, the witness who was able to share this with us. Great catch. We just got to keep examining these because that's kind of the name of the game. It's a numbers game. We don't have very many videos that are definitively identified. So the more of these that we get, the more we learn, and the more we can prove something unusual is going on. That's what's so exciting about Enigma and people sharing their videos, is that it's better data, it's more data, and that's what we need. Speaking of good and better data, this is a video that I'm really excited about. So this video was taken near Signal Mountain in Tennessee on September 30th, 2023. And I've got to say, Dustin from Utah MUFON is the one who pointed this one out to me, and it is a really good one. And I'll make this full screen so you can see it. Now, it's a 10-minute video. We're not going to look at all of the video, but I'll go over the highlights here for you. Let's go ahead and start at the beginning. So it's a great video. First, nothing happens for about 1 minute and 40 seconds. But if you go forward, let's go forward a bit here. So at about 1 minute and 40 seconds, you'll see an object. Right now, you just see stars. These are just stars. But at 1 minute 40, you'll see an object coming in from the bottom right, moving towards the center. Here it comes. It's from the bottom right, moving to the left, and then it moves and starts going up. So not a satellite, a very weird movement. It's also very slow. So not a bug. A bug would be moving pretty quickly, but it moves up and stops. Stops just for a second and then moves up again. Again, something stopping and hovering, a drone. But look, it looks just like the stars in the video. So really weird. This is weird too. So it keeps moving up, slowly kind of going up, and then it stops. And it stops for about a couple minutes. For a couple minutes, it just sits perfectly still here. What I love about this is that it fits in with the stars. It looks exactly like any of the other stars up there, and it's just sitting there, very still. So I'm going to fast forward this because it sits for about 2.5 minutes, just perfectly still there. Then about 5 minutes into the video, in just a few seconds here, we'll see it start to move again. So fascinating that it just sits perfectly still there. It does seem a little bit dimmer than before, but here we go. There you go. Starts moving again, slowly across the screen to the left. And just for people who know, this looks like a camera that is on somebody's roof. It is a sort of kind of security camera. We are in contact with the witness. The camera is looking up at the sky in between a couple trees. You just see stars and then this object. Now, this object is kind of more quickly moving through the screen from the right to the left. It's not going in a straight line. And then at about this point, it turns around and then it goes back. Now we're about 5.5 minutes into the video. Now it is traveling in a straight line back the way it came from. So it's moving fairly quickly. Now it's getting really close to the spot where it hovered for a couple minutes. It's kind of moving downward a little bit. So it's changing direction once again, just kind of quickly moving, and then leaves the screen to the right. How weird is that? This is a really strange video. The period of time where it just sits there, I kind of want to go back to that. Here it is where it just kind of sits there for a couple minutes, completely still, and then moves off again. This is a really weird video. It's one solid light that looks like a star that is moving. Now, when it moves around on the screen, you do see kind of a trail, but that is likely an effect from the camera because it's kind of it's using the night vision. And so anything that will move through the screen will kind of leave a tail like that. We're going to do more analysis on this. In fact, we are getting more videos from this camera to show like how it reacts to maybe a satellite or other things to see what those look like as opposed to this object. We're getting information on the direction, trying to figure out elevations. all of this kind of stuff. So we'll be doing an analysis on this. Ben Hansen is helping me out with that. We'll probably get Doug involved with this again. But really, really interesting case. I'll post this in the show notes for you guys to watch it if you're listening. And if anybody has any ideas on what this is, let us know, because this is such a weird one. I really don't know what the heck this is. This is an exciting one for me. So weird. And I've got more. So keep tuning into the show. So, and don't get disappointed if we figure out what this one is. And I doubt it. This is one that I think it's going to go down as unidentified. But let's say we do figure it out, like we figured out New York. That's okay, because there's more out there. We're getting more and more videos every day. So there's more and more videos like this to look at every day. So keep an eye on the Enigma Labs social media. Keep an eye on my social media, because I'm sharing these good ones. And if you've got the app, and I really implore you to have it, be sure to check that content feed. And when you open up the app, that'll be the first button on the left. And it's just videos. We're going to be putting more stuff in there, but it's just good videos that I found that I'm posting there that are either really mysterious or cool looking. We know what they are, but they look really cool. So for instance, you might find some Starlink or some rockets or some fireballs, like we've seen in the news lately, in there, but they're just really cool looking. But what a cool and mysterious video that is. Well, thank you to Karl Stephan, and thank you to all of you for tuning in once again. Keep an eye on the show notes for links to all of the news and the items that we talked about. And again, I just want to emphasize that we don't have to chase the government for information. We certainly don't have to get conspiratorial in order to just start gathering data and analyzing data on our own as citizen scientists, as people out in the public citizens interested in this topic. We can gather a lot of data, and we have a lot of our own ability to do our own analysis and research and to bring to light some of this mysterious information. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll catch you next time.